Welcome, Soomaya Javadi. I'd like to begin by thanking you for taking the time to come and interview with Cambridge Journal of Law, Politics, and Arts. You are truly a remarkable and inspiring figure to all women across the world, and despite all the pain and suffering you endured with the return of Taliban, you continue to fight for human rights both for women and the Hazara ethnicity. I would like to begin by asking you to tell us about your childhood briefly. What was life like before the US pulled out of Afghanistan and the Taliban came to power? And what were your main worries at that point in your life?
Thank you, Nadia, for inviting me. It's really an honor to speak to you. Um, so I was a dentistry student before the before Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, and I have spent most of my childhood in Islamic Republic of Iran, and there we were Afghan refugees, and the condition of Afghan refugees in Iran or in Pakistan is not good. I can give you examples. Like an Afghan refugee does not have the right to study,
Mm.
does not have the right to own a property, a car or a house in Iran. And even an Afghan refugee does not have the right to register. So those situations and conditions, circumstances, I was living in Iran for most of my childhood. Then I went to Afghanistan and I studied my high school there in Kabul. And then I went to university to study dentistry. I am a Hazara woman. I belong to Hazara ethnicity, which is one of the most persecuted ethnic groups in the history of Afghanistan. And I am Shia. And Shia Muslims are a minority against the Sunni majority of Afghanistan population. And so all these things made things harder for Hazara women who are, uh, twice inferior because of their gender and because of their because of their race and ethnicity. So when I went to the university, one of my professors in the first week, he said that you girls are taking the seats of men, the seats that belong to men here, and your ultimate goal in life is just go and stay at home and bear children. So why bother? And he thought that he's giving us an advice or something. So it wasn't easy. I think it's not easy to be a woman anywhere in the world with all the discriminations, but it was much harder in Afghanistan. And I think that every day that I and my fellows and my peers were going to school, we were going to work, we were fighting against the patriarchy that was uh, that existed in Afghanistan and exists now.
Yeah, thank you. I can't even imagine what that must have been like growing up. But following up from this upbringing, after the US withdrew their troops, the Taliban soon regained the power to establish their authoritarian regime. Can you please tell us about the atmosphere in your community when Kabul first fell to the Taliban?
So as you know, our president Ghani, he escaped. Like before the Taliban even get to Kabul, he escaped, and that made everyone panic. Like he escaped, what is going to happen to us? I remember like around 2 weeks before the fall, one of the Taliban's leaders said that if we want, we can get all Afghanistan in 2 weeks. I was like, he's bluffing. But maybe that was the only true thing that he said, because 2 weeks later, they got Kabul. And I remember that the day that Kabul fell to the Taliban, in the day, I went to university and I was going to ask for a kind of certificate or a paper that shows that I have studied 5.5 years here because I was a few months away from graduation. like in a few months, I would be a dentist. And I asked the people who were responsible there that I need some paper that if anything ever happens, I can show this and I can say that I was studying dentistry here for 5.5 years. And so they said that we should go to the Ministry of Education. We are not giving you that. I went to the Ministry of Education. They said, no, go back to your university and ask them. And just uh, they were just telling me to go there, and they were not willing to give it to me. At the end of the day, around 3 p.m., 3:30, people go for the day. And at around 3 p.m., I went to university for the last time, and I stopped this one professor and I said, I just need your signature under this paper that says that I have studied here. And he said, that's not my business. I don't care if you have studied here. And I knew why, because I was Hazara and I was woman, and he would have just liked to ignore me other than help me. Because on the phone, when I called him, he said, yes, please come. Because from my voice, he couldn't know that I'm Hazara. But as soon as he saw my face, he was not willing to help anymore. At 6 p.m. at home, I saw the Taliban's flag on the president's house, and which we call AG, and I couldn't sleep that night. And 2 weeks after that, I was like sleeping maybe 2 hours in every 24 hours, and I just couldn't believe what is happening to us. I remember that the night from that 6 p.m., my brother and we packed our books. We had around 500 books in our home, my books, my parents, my siblings. We packed them in big bags because we didn't know what is going to happen. We knew that they are searching house by house. We were told that, and it was the first day, and we were panicking, and the only thing we had were books. So we thought we should do something. My brother and he's 15 years old. We packed the books, we took them to backyard, we burned some of them, we buried most of them. At 4 a.m. in the morning, we were done. In the dark, I was lying down in my bed, and I thought that I'm not dead yet, but it's like the Taliban are pouring soil on me. I was choked in my tears. Beside my empty bookcase, I was choked in my tears, and I thought that, have I ever existed? Has my life ever existed? All the things that I have done, all the books that I have read, I was a dentistry student. I was a woman, a free woman, an independent woman. And I had my life, and in a second, in one night, everything was done. You are nothing. From now on, you are nothing. From that day to this date, the Taliban have announced 86 commands, verbal or official, to limit women, to limit women's lives. And it's like they have nothing else to do but to put limitless limits on our lives.
Thank you, Soomaya, for sharing that very painful story. And I know that just even reflecting back, it's like reliving that moment again. Um, just a few things that you said that resonated with me. It seems like you were very proactive when the Taliban took back power and Kabul fell. So you went immediately to get your papers from dentistry to prove that you were a student. You and your family were quick to bury the books and any sort of evidence to suggest that you were an educated, strong woman. Is it Was that a preparation for the worst case scenario, or did you already have a feeling that it would get as bad as it did?
I mean, I know the history. The Taliban are the Taliban who killed 2,000 to 8,000 Hazaras in Mazar Sharif in 1998. During 3 days, they enter a city and they shoot anything that moves. This is the Taliban. And I knew the history. I knew how they treated women last time, how they treated other ethnicities other than Pashtuns last time. And I was fearing for my life. I remember that in the first week, I saw the photos of journalists, Hazara journalists, and they were men who were tortured, and they published the photo of their bodies. The bodies were terrible, the way that they were tortured, like all full of bruises and blood everywhere. And my father was a journalist. I feared for my father and for every member of my family. And I knew the history. So yes, I think I knew what is going to happen. And you know, when humans decide to do bad, to be evil, there's no limit for that. And the Taliban now are breaking a misogyny, a new record.
Thank you very much for sharing this horrific, terrifying situations happening. And I would also like to ask you, like, what was the first reaction for the men of your community? Like the first hours they got to know that the Taliban came to the power?
Um, I have been asked this question a lot. Like, the Taliban are maybe the most misogynist government right now in the world, but it's not like they are only doing this towards women. They are a group of people who just represent one gender and one ethnicity and one religion. I will give you an example of what happens to men in my community. There's this man whose name is Rajab. He is a Hazara man, Hazara Shia man, and Gulandam, his wife, is a Sunni Pashtun woman, and they have been married for the last 15 years, and they have 4 children. But when the Taliban came, they arrested this man and woman, and they tortured them. And the children could hear the sound, their parents' voices when they were being tortured in the other room. And the man says that they were using, they would put pipe in my mouth, they would hit me, they would kick me, and they would use those electric shockers on me. And I said, why are you hitting me? Why are you beating me up? What's my crime? And they said, because you are Hazara and you are married to a Pashtun woman and you have to get divorced. And he says that we have a certificate, a marriage certificate. Why are you hitting me? Why are you beating me? And they would just say, because you are Hazara, because you are a Hazara man who dared to marry a Pashtun woman, so that's your crime. And then they tortured him and they killed his brother, and then they forced him to leave his religion, to become Sunni. He was Shia, to become Sunni, and then they released him. This is the way they treat all people, you know? This is the way. It's not only about women, it's much more complicated than that. So men and women were scared, and were scared when the Taliban came, because they knew that the way that they are going to treat people is will be terrible.
Like, what was the defiance? Did the people try to do anything with that, or they just were hiding?
So the first thing that happened was the president escaping. That made everyone panic. And as the president escaped, people went to the airport, as you know, and all of those videos and pictures that then were published in social media of people hanging on to airplanes and those crowds behind the doors of the gates of the airport, because people were panicking. But from those days until now, women were protesting on the streets, asking the Taliban, demanding the Taliban to give them their rights back. The Taliban will hit them, will arrest them, but they are not stopping. There's this Hazara woman. Her name is Alia Azizi, and she was the head of a prison in Herat, in the city of Herat, before the Taliban. One of the Taliban's commanders says that you should come to see me or we will arrest you or something, and then she goes there and she never comes back. And she has a husband, she has children, but after a year, there are some pictures of her on social media and in some news platforms that she was forced to marry a Taliban commander. And this is a very familiar story. It's like Handmaid's Tale, the Margaret Atwood's novel. Being forced to marry while you have your own children, your own husband. This is how women are treated. But even beside those kind of treatments, women were protesting on the streets with bare hands, no guns, nothing, but just demanding the Taliban to give them their rights back. And when they are arrested, I remember that at the end of 2020, maybe in the spring of 2022, I saw this video of women being forced to confess and say that we are hired by the foreigner countries to go on the street and protest. And it was obvious that they are forced to confess. And then there were these photos and news on social media and on different news platforms that the women who go to protest, their dead bodies are being found among dirt and trash. Like the Taliban even don't bury when they kill. They put the body in the trash so people can see and people can be afraid, like, and people, they just want that fear to grow among people. But even besides all of those things, women still are going on the street and still are demanding their rights from the Taliban, but no one hears them. They have no other support but their own.
Yeah, those stories are completely awful, and it's hard to believe that it's all happening in 21st century. Could you please tell, like, what are the worst crimes occurring in Afghanistan to date that go unaddressed and unaccounted by the international community?
So the women's situation in Afghanistan is something that people talk about and people address, but they don't take action about it. Like, it's like the Taliban got women hostage and they are demanding the world to accept them, to approve of them. Otherwise, they will do this and they will do that to women. It should be the other way around. Like, it should be the other way around. It shouldn't be like the Taliban are using women's situation as a leverage on the international community. That's one of the problems that have been addressed, but people don't react, don't do an action against it. And another thing is that, so when the Taliban came, the Kuchis, the Pashtun nomads, Pashtuns are another ethnicity in Afghanistan, beside all other ethnicities. They force people to leave their lands, their ancestral lands, and they are backed by the Taliban. And they go to different cities and different provinces in Afghanistan, and especially they force Hazara people to leave their lands, or they will be killed by them. And when the Hazara people go to the authorities, which are the Taliban, to say that this is our land and this is the proof that this land belongs to us, the Taliban will not listen to them and will back the Pashtun nomads, because the Taliban are also mostly Pashtun. And these people are forced to leave their lands while they have nowhere to go. They go to the cities, but they with no money, because they can't even take anything with them. Their animals or their properties, whatever belongs to them, they have to leave, and they have to just leave the land and give it to the Pashtun nomads. And besides that, they would come and ask people for money. For example, they would say that this person was killed 20, 30 years ago in this village, and you have to pay for it, like the whole village. You have to pay for it. And these are all recorded. And I have been reading articles about it in Persian, and these are all recorded, that they demand people to give them money because someone's brother was killed in that village 30 years ago, and there is no investigation on that. The Taliban would just back those people, and that's the way other ethnicities are being treated in Afghanistan. Like, they would come and they would say that this land belongs to us based on this proof. And the question is that, where were you all these years? Like, in the last 20 years, where were you? Why now? Because now the Taliban has the power. The Pashtuns have the power. And that's something that is not addressed properly. And the genocide against Hazara people that is going on in Afghanistan. In 2020, there was a terrorist attack on a maternity hospital in Dashtabarchi, Kabul, western Kabul, a Hazara resided area, where the terrorists shot dead women who were pregnant, hours and minutes away from labor. They killed 2 newborns. In 2021, there was a terrorist attack on a school, Said al-Shahada High School, a girls' school, where around 80 girls, school girls, little girls, were killed, and many were injured and disabled forever. And in 2022, there was another terrorist attack on a boys' school, Abdul Rahim Shahid. The same thing happened there. In our neighborhood in Kabul, in my neighborhood in Kabul, in Dashtabarchi, western Kabul, is every month there are several terrorist attacks and killings that is happening, and it is like the Taliban and the terrorists have impunity to do anything they want. They are killing mothers, children, newborns, and this is a genocide, and no one is like it's the Taliban have impunity and no one is asking them or no one is holding them accountable.
So you mentioned that many people had to leave their houses, and actually you given the 30 Birds initiative that helped you and your family escape Afghanistan. What did you bring with you after leaving your house?
So when we were leaving our home, we were so afraid. We didn't take too many things. We had just one suitcase for all of us. We were a family of 5 at that time, and I think we just got a pair of clothes for every one of us, toothbrush, some things that are necessary. And the only thing that I took with me that was very dear to me was my diary. I had 2 diaries, the notebooks, and I chose one of them because we couldn't get many things. It would be so heavy for us. So we wanted to be lighter, to move faster. So I just took my diary with me, and I couldn't take any of my books or anything. I took some documents of my education that proves that I've been educated in those things. And we went to Mazar Sharif, where we were told that there will be an airplane that will take off, and we will go with that. So we went to Mazar Sharif. It's a 7 to 10 hour journey from Kabul to Mazar Sharif, and we stayed in Mazar Sharif for around 2 weeks, and that airplane never took off because there was some change in the Taliban's leadership at that time. So the 30 Birds Foundation, they told us to go back to Kabul because there's no way we can fly from Mazar Sharif. And it was so hopeless. Like, we were trying to find a way to get out, but it was impossible. Like, we were so hopeless. We took the journey to go back to Kabul, and in the middle of the way, our bus broke down. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains. There was no other car or bus that could take us. The bus broke down because of bad luck, and we had to walk for several hours through those mountains, and we could see the Taliban's vehicles and them with their guns and with everything, and I had this huge black hijab on me, and it was humiliating. At the same time, I was fearing for my life and my family's lives, and we were walking for several hours. I still have the videos and the photos of those hours. My brother was carrying the big suitcase, and we were walking through the mountains, and I had and that hijab, that black hijab, was humiliating. It was summer, it was hot, but it was so humiliating because I didn't believe in that hijab. I was just scared, and I had to have that. It was forced by the Taliban on me. And I remember my dad told me, like, walk as if they're not here. Just don't look at them. Just walk. And then we managed to find another car. We went to the next city, and a journey that was 7 to 10 hours. It took a day for us to reach Kabul. And the next morning we had to be at the border. So in order to not be late, we went at night, and we slept the night on the ground. It was a dirty ground, nothing. We had nothing. Like, some of us slept on the ground, some of us slept in the car. And I was so hopeless, so dreamless. I thought that my mind was very empty. I had no hope, and it wasn't for sure that we could get to somewhere. It was just losing everything, leaving my home, the places that I loved, the people that I loved, my friends, the objects that I liked, books, a diary, my life, like everything. And it's funny because after a month, when we finally came to Canada, the first thing that the officer told us when we landed and when we came out of the airplane and went to the airport, the first thing that the officer said, it wasn't hello, it was happy birthday. Like you are born again. I felt dead the night I was sleeping on the ground at the border. And then the officer said happy birthday, and it was another life.
Thank you, Soomaya, for sharing that experience. I mean, that's just absolute trauma for you, and it's just outrageous that you and so many individuals in Afghanistan had to suffer in such gruesome and I mean, it's just a human atrocities in so many different forms. Um, and so I appreciate you going into detail, really just to spread the awareness and to discuss, because these are things that people do not know about that's happening. So it's really important that we address this. Um, I want to shift a little bit to discuss some of the points you mentioned earlier about talking about accountability and the international community needing to know what's happening and needing to respond to the Taliban. And again, not, as you said, not negotiating with terrorists, because as you said, they are using the women as leverage, but it should be the other way around. My first question that I want to ask you specifically about is in respect to the United States. Um, with all the political discussions around it, what were your thoughts when the US first pulled out?
Um, I I felt like I am a character in a video game who thinks that has a life and has a goal or something, but then I just was played by others. When the Taliban came and Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, I couldn't do one single thing to change anything. I didn't have any rule in it, and I thought I felt betrayed. I felt that I thought that I have a life, but no, I was not born to live. I was not born like in August 23rd, I have written something in my diary. One of the sentences that I wish I had never heard that all humans are equal. I am not equal, and there is no way I can be equal. I wish that I had never been told that I am a human, because I'm not. When I don't have the right, when I don't have the rights, how does that work? I wish that I wasn't lied to when I started to study, when I learned how to read, when I learned how to write, when I learned how to dream. And in Geneva, you were in Geneva, and I said that I know a little girl whose name is Kausar, and she is in Afghanistan, and she is one of the most remarkable little young ladies, little ladies that I have ever seen in my life. The way that she sings, the way that she talks, I remember her, and I think that she has no choice whatsoever what to do with her life, because it's the Taliban who determines that who or what she will be. And I said, do you trust the Taliban enough to leave your own daughter to them? Do you trust the Taliban to leave Kawthar's life to them? That was how I was feeling.
Thank you for sharing that. It's just it is just such a heartbreaking situation, and as we speak, that it's just ongoing and continuous. And this is why it's so important that we continue the dialogue, because at the end of the day, politicians need to know what's happening. Individuals, everyday people need to know what's happening to pressure their governments to respond. On that note, I know this is a very question for politicians to address, but from your perspective, what kind of things would you like to see actioned from the international community that you think could scare the Taliban or pressure them to slowly move away from these human rights abuses that they're committing out of fear?
First thing that I want to say is that we are not a project. We are people, and this is our lives. It's not some kind of project that you work on sometime and then you stop, and then you work on it sometime and then you stop.
Yeah.
We are not project. We are people. I've been seeing some efforts to engage with it. So I'm asking the international community, do not engage with the Taliban. Do not engage with the Taliban, and do not engage with the Taliban. I'm asking you and I'm appealing to you, please do not engage with the Taliban. What Taliban? The Taliban who kills women, the Taliban who kills children, the Taliban who is confiscating people's land, who is just representing one gender, one religion, and one ethnicity, who is ignoring everyone else and everything else. The Taliban who says that women are not allowed to go out of their homes without a male chaperone. The Taliban who even does not allow women to work in their own saloons. That was the last command of the Taliban. What do you have in common with the Taliban to engage with them? And I ask every influential woman, influential politician who is a woman, the Taliban are breaking a new record of misogyny every day. And you should stop them. It's not about only Afghan women, it's about women. It's about women being nothing in Afghanistan. Someone was talking about a gender apartheid in Afghanistan, and I said, yes, there is a gender apartheid in Afghanistan, but if you look closely, it's more than that. Like, a woman in Afghanistan is equal to nothing. Like, when you don't have the right to even go out of your home, it's like they treat you like you are nothing. And that's about women. It's not just about Afghanistan. And about the Hazara genocide, I come from a family who has been suffering from genocide and deprivation and exile for generations. My great-grandfather was killed by his family was killed by Abdurrahman Khan's army when he was around 12, and he was forced to leave his land, and he went to northern Afghanistan to start his own family. And then my grandfather was killed by the Soviets. My uncle was killed by the Soviets. And when I say Soviets, it's like the Afghan people who became communists, and my father was forced to leave his homeland when he was 15 years old. He lost his father when he was 2. He lost his mother when he was 8. He lost his brother when he was 6. And with all of those things, we still stayed in Afghanistan for so long because my parents believed that they wanted to build this country. They wanted to see their children raised in this country and have freedom and have equality. I as a woman was fighting for equality every day that I went to school, every day that I went to work, I was saying that no matter how hard it is, I am here. I am here. I am a Hazara woman. I am Hazara Shia woman who is equal to you. The international community must hold the Taliban accountable for all their crimes, for all the killings that they have done, and for all the atrocities and crimes they have done. They must be held accountable. Asked that, why are the Taliban so afraid of women? And I said, and I answered it somehow, but now I think the Taliban are not afraid of anyone. Taliban are not afraid of anyone. They are doing whatever they want because they have total impunity whatsoever, like in the ways that they are treating people.
Mm.
So my plead to international community is hold the Taliban accountable for what they are doing, especially the way that they treat women and the Hazara genocide. We want the Taliban to be accountable for what they are doing to Hazara people.
And I think that's the brilliant response, and I think that needs to be spread in that discussion because at the end of the day, if the dialogue keeps continuing, you're just speaking to a terrorist. They're not going to respond. They're not afraid of us. They're just going to take advantage of the fact that we're trying to make peaceful discussions, and they're just going to continue with their human rights abuses. So I think the way you just framed that so perfectly really hones in on that. I wanted to ask, following up on that, the one thing that comes to my mind is cutting off the dialogue with the Taliban, so not engaging with them. Do you think that could become dangerous for all the Afghan people now, that there's no oversight of what's going on? Or do you think if we cut off the dialogue with the Taliban, that would make the Taliban feel more pressure to uh, minimize the abuses that they're occurring, succumb more to international standards?
I know that the Taliban are using the international humanitarian aids to support themselves and their soldiers, their allies. Like the international humanitarian aids that is going to Afghanistan is not helping people who are in need, is supporting the Taliban and their allies. On the other hand, if you engage with the Taliban and if you approve of them, it's not like they will change. It's not like they will remove all the rules that they have done to limit women's lives. And I think that international community must use that, like the international community must stop helping the Taliban with those aids and helps, and they must put bans on the Taliban. That's the way you engage with a bully. You know, like you shouldn't invite them and talk to them. You shouldn't take them on private jets to talk to them. They are terrorists. And the only way that they will understand what you're saying is to put pressure on them, to have diplomacy with them, and to put pressure on them, to put bans on them, to use leverages on them. They want the international community to approve them, so they have to try for it. So they have to, I mean, they are not doing anything. It's just the international community talking about engaging with the Taliban, but the Taliban are not doing anything. You know, they are just continuing with all their atrocities. That's what makes me angry.
Thank you. I also just want to ask you, I mean, after everything you've endured, you still stand here today as a strong, beautiful Hazara Shia woman. How do you overcome this loss and empower yourself as a woman to continue fighting for this battle?
The other day I was biking. I live in Canada, in Saskatchewan, a small city, and I was biking. And I thought that maybe someday when I was 16 years old or 15 years old, I thought that, you know what? I don't want a job. I don't believe in it anymore. And I remembered that one of my dreams was to bike without a scarf on my head. And I remembered that in September 2022, there was a terrorist attack at the Kaj Educational Center in Dashtabarchi, Western Kabul, the neighborhood where I used to reside. And in that attack, many Hazara teenagers were killed. One of them was Marzia. Marzia was a teenager girl whose diary was vastly shared on social media, the pages of her diary, the things that she was writing. On one page, it was like, I have a dream that one day I could bike listening to music. I could ride a bicycle listening to music. One day I would go to visit Eiffel Tower. One day I would go to Italy and I would eat pizza. And I would go meet Elif Shafak, the Turkish writer. And then I told myself, don't you ever dare to take this moment for granted. You are biking without a scarf and you have freedom. So it's on you to fight for freedom of people that only you know in what situation they are. Like, I was in their situation, so I know what is happening to them. And I didn't want that for myself, and I don't want that for anyone, any other woman. So I think that I need to tell stories, because if I don't, who would?
No, and I think that's exactly the point. If you don't, who will? And it's unjust that that burden is put on you, but you have just been voicing the voiceless of so many Afghan women and the Hazara, and spreading awareness about what's ongoing, and it is making wonders around the world by issuing this shock and motion of urgency. Um, I On top of that, further to all the work you've been doing, how do you think we as a society can help empower the women, specifically in Afghanistan, but also all around the world where misogyny is taking place?
I think the world needs more compassion. As I said before, we should start seeing people as people, not projects. Like, I once thought that when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, I thought that I was not born to live as a human. I was born to be the casualty list and some kind of news. And when in the news it says that like, the casualty in this terrorist attack was around 100 people, that 100 people could be 101. So that one person was even ignored in the news. And the world needs more compassion. We should listen to the stories, and in whatever position we are, we should try to stop it. I ask everyone, in whatever position you are, if you can do anything, stop the world to engage with the Taliban, from engaging with the Taliban. That's not the way, that's not the right way. Maybe I'm not expert enough to know what is the right way, but I know that engaging with the Taliban doesn't help. It just will make them more powerful, and they will do, when they get enough power, they will do what they did 20 years ago in September 11. I mean,
On a final note, what is the lasting message you want readers and viewers to think about for the current situation in Afghanistan?
I want you to know that people in Afghanistan, women and men, all people, there are many people who are fighting against the Taliban. They could be women who protest on the streets every day. They could be girls who are still studying at home, who are being tutored by their family members. There are even underground schools in Afghanistan, and let me give you this example that after what happened to Said al-Shuhada High School, the next week's people still were sending their daughters to school because we believe in education. There are people in Afghanistan, especially Hazara people, who believe in education and they want it for their daughters and for their sons. So I appeal to you to stand with people who want freedom instead of standing with the Taliban or standing impartial.
Thank you, Soomaya, for your time today and for answering these very personal, difficult, and painful questions. We're truly inspired by your heroic work and for standing by your people as you continue to fight for human rights and democracy in Afghanistan. And by exposing these outrageous and shocking international crimes, we will continue to spread your story and this message in our upcoming publication.